to our first session around DVA. Today we'll be talking about why the DVA exists. Everyone wants to see AI outcomes until finance asks, where's the value on the income statement? And that's where most initiatives go to die. Mags, what would you define as the job?
Well, Zjaén, for me, very importantly, everyone wants to see the value, and everyone wants to define value differently. So some say it's speed, others say it's the data purity. They talk about the money, and everything can become quite messy in that sense. So someone needs to pull all these strings together and make sure everything happens right. I think that's the job.
Yeah, and I mean and as you mentioned, like all these things becomes priorities for multiple people, and at some point these priorities collide. It's what's now more important? Are we increasing revenue or cutting cost? Or do we want speed, or do we want to clean the data? So I think with that in mind, what we want to do today is specifically unpack the framework, or sort of getting towards what the DVA is in essence. And over the next 8 weeks or 8 sessions, we're going to dive a bit deeper. We're going to look at some case studies. We're going to look at practical ways of sort of getting into the DVA role if you're looking at a career change. We're also going to look at what frameworks you can use. We will talk you through the data value assurance framework in quite a lot of detail. But we want to solidify the message into the market of why the DVA is very important at this point in time. There's significant investments being made in AI and analytics. And unfortunately, what happens is that the data teams get a bad rep because they do everything technically that they're supposed to do, but somehow they don't deliver the value to business. And the CFOs and the people in the room say, but why? Right? And this affects everyone. If you're just a data engineer in a team, or a data lead, or a chief data officer, at some point in time, this would have affected you, if it's not already affecting you or currently affecting you. But also on the other side, as a chief marketing officer, operating officer, information officer, the thought would have crossed your mind at some point in time is, why are we making these investments into data analytics? Because it's not really clear to us as a business what the value is. So in essence, a data value architect is accountable for translating business intent into measurable value and assuring that value is realized through delivery and adoption. So what does this actually mean? So I want to create a bit of a story around sort of how you can picture the DVA in a practical sense within your organization, but also understanding that it's similar to another role, but it's not the same as another role. And another role that I'm referring to is enterprise architecture. So when IT became a thing and technology became a thing, there was this big shift around, well, we have all this new technology, we need to start using it. And then people said, but technology is important. We need to get computers, we need to get PCs. And people say, but how do we justify the investment? Now we're buying all these desktop machines, and people end up playing solitaire on it rather than actually doing the work. So there was sort of the unwanted consequences of some of these investments as well. And every single time new technology, new hype comes in, it takes some time where the technology then takes some time to stick. I mean, it's the same thing with the advent of internet, where it became something very quick. People say, but we need to find a use case for it. We need to find a use case for it. Now it's part and parcel to our everyday lives. You don't really even know that you're consuming the internet. The only time that you are aware of the internet is when it's not there. So when you can't connect to Wi-Fi or it goes down, then it sort of becomes to bug you. In the world of data, the world is very similar. But in IT, they sort of solve this problem to a great extent by bringing in the role of an enterprise architect to bridge the gap between business and IT. So somebody could now take what business wants and their processes and they focus around what needs to happen, and they can convey it in such a way that the technical teams or the IT teams, technology teams now know what they need to do to enable business to do what business does. Right? Enterprise architects are not supposed to just focus on the systems. They focus on the enterprise holistically across all processes. And their main focus is to enable the enterprise. We sort of pivoted to the other way around. The data value architect focuses on creating value from data analytics and AI investments. So you have the data teams that's doing what they're supposed to do. You've got business and they've got their priorities. but someone needs to orchestrate them as well as the IT team in conjunction. So that trifecta of the IT, data, and business teams in order to realize value. Can't just deliver analytics. Analytics on its own doesn't deliver any value. So how do you get those sort of three functions working together? Yes, you might think it's impossible. We have heard many horror stories over the years from our customers and even experienced it ourselves where we think it's impossible for these functions to come together. And the reason why it's relatively impossible is because the priorities are not aligned, and the DVA actually helps to align those priorities. So the DVA actually then closes the following three gaps. The one is the value definition ambiguity that exists within an organization. Multiple people talk about value in different ways. They see it in different ways. They focus on things in different ways, right? So one company one corporate or one large organization, the overall organizational focus would be is let's increase revenue. But for them to increase revenue, they need to make some investments, and there's going to be some expenditure in certain areas. And maybe in one of those areas would be data analytics. Now they spend that money on data analytics, and now they become cost sensitive. So what do they now balance? Mitigating the cost from the data analytics function or focusing on increasing the revenue, right? And sometimes these things should not be mutually exclusive. So the value definition ambiguity within an organization causes a lot of chaos. Along the line, there should only be a single set of things that the business needs to achieve, and then a subset of the things that makes those things possible, right? We refer to those as value-generating initiatives, the main things that business needs to achieve, the things that needs to be in place to get to that point of value, we refer to as the foundational initiatives. The second gap that the DVA closes is delivery drift. You start with one thing in mind, and it ends up becoming something else. In many organizations, you put down data platforms, bring in AI, bring in very skilled resources, and then because there's not maybe proper change management, whatever the complexity might be, or there's other cultural issues, from an adoption perspective, what ends up happening is you have now very highly skilled people, very highly paid people, ended up doing Power BI reports, dashboards, and Excel sheets. So the delivery drift shifts. What we had in mind now becomes something else. We're not solving, or we didn't build for something specifically in mind, and that something specifically in mind should have been value. The third gap that the DVA closes is benefits not being realized or not evidenced. Right? So the basic concept of being a DVA is everything needs to be documented and defendable. If you can track it and you can show it and you can prove it, then you're good. If you can't, you need to question it, right? So, and I've been through this myself many a time, in terms of business cases being pushed through, value cases being pushed through, investments being pushed through, based on very light things around, but we are enabling the business, right? So we can't always put rands and cents or dollars to it. We need to enable the business. Now, the data value architect takes a step back and says, okay, but why are you enabling the business, and what are you enabling the business for? If you are enabling the business to do AI, why should the business be doing AI in the first place? What cases for value are you chasing? Are you just exploring or not? Even such, the concept of failing fast in innovation needs to be measured in some way, shape, and form. You can't continuously just burn through cash and throw money at innovation and not have a clear stage gate where you can say, but we need to prove value before we proceed. So the DVA closes those three gaps. The one is the value definition ambiguity. The second one is delivery drift. And then the third one is the benefits not evidenced. They really become the orchestrator of value within the organization to bring things together to make sure that when investments are made, that value can be realized from those things. Now, Mags, we're going to do a lot of these in our sessions. We need the reality check from your side. Somebody needs to keep us honest. So we have a view of what the DVA is. We sort of have a view of what's happening in the world. But what's Mags's reality check for the week?
I must say, for me, I cannot actually emphasize it more, that there must be someone that listens to business and hear the heartbeat of the business. Because so many times have I seen it happen that a dashboard would be delivered, even predictive models being delivered, beautifully anti-churn model sitting there. Every customer has got their score, and it's not being used because no one is taking that journey to the next step and embedding it in business and listening to business and hearing where to switch the light on and where not to stay quiet, because it's actually eventually the asset that needs to turn into some or other behavioral change. And if you, as an IT guru, cannot hear that, it becomes very difficult to ensure that there's the change. And hence the DVA becomes that switch point of making sure that that value comes out of that predictive model or out of that dashboard, and it's changing the behavior. It is in extreme cases, I've seen so many amounts of money, millions of rands sitting on the shelf of suites of models being developed, no one owning it, no one owning that customer journey, that journey with the business, the business being the customer. Because for me as a DVA, my customer is business, because I'm making sure I get analytics to flourish. And it's this, what you mentioned now earlier, is actually for me very important, that measurability, because how often did I found projects where at the start of the project people can't say, but how am I going to measure the success? And if you don't define your success up front, then you solve the wrong problem often.
Yeah.
And then what does that help? So yeah, definitely, Zjaén, for me, big time, you have to listen to business and to ensure that you have their heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the reality check, Max. I'm looking forward to these every week. It's somebody needs to keep us honest. It's not always, like Carl always says, it can't always be cupcakes and rainbows. It's not always great. There's realities that we're facing, and it's not necessarily that people are doing things wrong. I think it's just as this matures over time, we're going to learn more. Like the data, like the concept of data, how important data is. It's been a conversation for some time, but the practice is only now really maturing to the extent where more people are taking account to it. So the key takeaway for today then is, if value can't be explained, owned, measured, and defended, you can expect disappointment. So the challenge for the listeners or the people that's watching this is, just pick one initiative that you're currently working on, or that you're aware of, or that you're about to embark on, and write down the value hypothesis in 3 lines. If you can't, within 3 lines, indicate what you think the value, or estimate what the value, and I'm not talking about necessarily putting the rands and the cents and the dollars to it, but if you can't articulate the initiative, and if it's going to either reduce risk, reduce cost, improve operational efficiency, or increase revenue, you need to start asking the questions around, are we doing the right things, or are we doing this because somebody said we should, or are we doing this because we're chasing some hype? So thanks for listening in today. For next week, and I hope you guys catch us next week. Next week, we'll unpack the patterns we've seen in real programs. We'll actually go into actual case studies where the role of a DVA would have probably changed the outcome of what we did quite significantly. And probably would have created success and not a point of failure, right? Because that last bit that I said is, if value can't be explained, owned, measured, defended, expect disappointment. Believe you me, we have seen it all. We have experienced that disappointment. We are currently dealing with people that has that disappointment. We want to empower people not to have that anymore. And one of the key ways to fix it is the DVA and the role of the DVA. So thanks for listening today. Thanks to Mags and the info that she's given us, the reality check. She's going to keep us honest. Mags has also had a lot of really good, experiences in the DVA world, implementing these frameworks, building it out over time. So she's going to share a lot of that expertise with you guys over the weeks to come. So thank you for dialing in, and yeah, let's enjoy the value journey.